William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. Welcome to the College of Complexes, being held at Barbeck's Restaurant at 8949 Garland Road, Dallas, Texas. Gently embracing the east side of White Rock Lake. When I entered, I was greeted like coming home to Grandma's house, warm and friendly. When visiting the Barbeck's Restaurant, tell them you want your reservations for the next College of Complex class.
Well, welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 240th meeting since we started in February of 2009. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. They have to be for or against something, they don't care what it is. We give an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, remind the interrupter we only listen one fool at a time. Then we have question and answers, not speeches. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in the audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at this podium to respond to what the speaker said, for or against. And the speaker gets the last word, gets a comment and close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we put our speaker on, we have announcements. If there's any announcements, anybody wants to make any announcements, now's the time to do it. You got any announcements you want to make? Anybody? You got any announcements you want to make? Now's the time. No announcements. Oh, I can't believe it.
I have an announcement.
Oh, come on up here. Come up here and make one. George,
I don't think anybody could hear you. No, I'm kidding, Tom. There's going to be, which I wish I had brought them with me, the Sierras Club is putting on a symposium October 4th and 5th. And if you can get it online, and there's a lot of great speakers, and they're going to talk about different energy issues, including fracking, including oil, including alternate means of energy. So I would suggest right now it's $55 for the 2 days, and it will go up tomorrow, I think, or maybe September 2nd to $70. But I think those that are interested in what's happening with our environment and with our energy may find it very interesting. I've signed up for it, but thank you.
Any other announcements? No? Well, next week we have Dr. Stephen Butler. He's going to talk about why organized religion is undeserving of the respect it holds. That'll be interesting to sign the itinerary there. Following week we have why will Social Security be around in 50 years? That's Norma Warner. She's a retired federal investigator. That ought to be good. That's her background. That's also in your itinerary. September 20th, we have Build a Bigger House. It's a bigger House of Representatives. She's going to talk about that. That'll be interesting. He wants to blow it up, but anyway, and I think if you took the population from 1910 till now, it's about doubled. So we'd have to have twice the size of the house, I think. Anyway, that's coming up.
Why don't we build a new house?
Well, anyway, that's what she wants to do, is to build a bigger house. September 27th, how do strategies of the political progressive left compare to our nation's founders? That's a Ray Freelia. He's usually here, but he's not here tonight. But maybe because he's a speaker, anyway, he'll be a speaker for September 27th. But tonight we have Gene Lantz. He's going to talk about Labor Day, past, present, and future. He's the president, he's sitting right here, he's the president of Texas Alliance for Retired Americans, Texas State Alliance for Retired Americans. He's going to discuss how he is in favor of big celebration of Labor Day. He is committed to making the workers' movement strong. He notes that from 1947 to 1995, the American Union steadily became more allocated from the rest of the working class. Alienated, excuse me, wrong word. I can't read my own notes. In 1993, with the change in leadership, the AFL-CIO union shifted directions so that today Major union leaders demand that all unions turn outward toward the community at large. Union legislative programs are designed to benefit all workers, not just the narrow slice of union members. Gene notes, for example, the major campaign of AFL-CIO during August 2013 is to mobilize support for immigration reform, and prior to 1999, the AFL-CIO favored deportations. He argues that this turn toward the broader working class is not a simple, not inconsequential matter. Gene lays out that everyone should get behind this because that's the only way it will work. It has to work if there's to be a bright future for Americans. So without further ado, please, a very, very warm welcome to Gene Lantz.
Bad news, everybody. I'm going to sing.
All right. He never did finish that song.
Well, this is the year that Pete Seeger died. And people think Pete Seeger did concerts, and he did, but in truth, what he really tried to do is get other people to sing. That's why I wrote these songbooks. So you can sing. George, give everybody a song.
Sure.
You can keep those if
Be
you
a
like.
sing-along.
I get them cheap. You don't have to sing this one, it's not in the book. I always wanted to perform this, and I never have. Oh, you ain't done nothing if you ain't been called a red. If you marched or agitated, why you bound to hear it said. So you might as well enjoy it or love the word instead. 'Cause you ain't been doing nothing if you ain't been called a red. When I was just a little boy, I used to love parades with cotton candy and hot dogs and sometimes lemonade. When I come in one evening, my neighbor's father said, "Them marches is all communist, my boy. Are you a red?" So I didn't know just what he meant. My hair in them days was brown. My house was painted white like every other in the town. So I went and asked my mother why the neighbor called me red. My mother took me on her knee and this is what she said. "Oh, you ain't done nothing if you ain't been called a red. If you marched or agitated, why you bound to hear it said. So you might as well enjoy it or love the word instead. 'Cause you ain't been doing nothing if you ain't been called a red." Is it okay for me to stand there? It's tragic that Pete Seeger died, but you know, he was 99, I think. And performing and leading singing right up to the end. So my thought about it is that we should keep that going. You learn a lot from these songs, and I hope you pay attention to the lyrics in the ones in this book. This is maybe not the best selection, or maybe not the most complete selection. Most of these songs are Appalachian, bluegrass music. Where's Joe Hill in this thing? Let's sing Joe Hill. It's a good sad song. There it is on, is that 12 or 14, 18? Can't see it.
Put your cheaters on.
Have to see. 18. Okay, let's try this. It's just a simple song. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you or me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he. I never died, said he. It was a very good book, came out 2 years ago, called The Man Who Never Died. Joe Hill was not a big labor leader, but he was well known for his songs, wrote songs.
And eventually he was charged with having robbed a convenience store and shot the clerk. And then he went to the firing squad. He was really famous for the last few months that he was in prison, where he wrote a lot of letters. I've actually seen some of them. I actually held one in my hand that Joe Hill wrote on yellow tablet paper. And the most famous one of all ended by saying, "Don't mourn, organize." That's Joe Hill. And Salt Lake Joe, by God, says I, him standing by my bed, they framed you on a murder charge, says Joe, but I ain't dead. Says Joe, but I ain't dead. The copper bosses killed you, Joe, they killed you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe. I didn't die. Says Joe, I didn't die. Joe Hill ain't dead, he says to me. Joe Hill ain't never died. Where working folks defend their rights, Joe Hill is by their side. Joe Hill is by their side. From San Diego up to Maine, and every mine and mill, where working folks defend their rights, it's there you'll find Joe Hill. It's there you'll find Joe Hill. What about?
Can he have him leaving a little bit? He's,
Sure.
He's my baseball friend.
Sure. So, then it goes, I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night again. This was written about 10 years after Joe Hill died. And I think he was shot in 1910. Does it say? Oh, 1914. He was executed on November 19th, 1915. Joe Hill will never die. And they say that in Latin America, if you say the names of different revolutionary heroes or working class heroes, they'll say, "Presente." You say, "Comandante Che Guevara." Everybody says, "Presente." He's still present. He's among us. He's with us. And that's kind of the theme and the idea of why we study labor history. It's not that it's all heroes and heroines. It's not that it's all beautiful. It's not that it's all romantic. And it's certainly not that it's all successful, because it wasn't. In fact, most of the efforts of the working class in America have been unsuccessful, to the extent that even many of them were drowned in blood. There were federal troops firing on workers. There were state troops. The Texas Rangers, for example, that we idolize in Texas. You know, one riot, one ranger. You know, and we have Chuck Norris showing us how great the Rangers are. They were scab herders and strike busters right up until 1962. Not to mention their history of genocide, but in the labor movement, they were known as the guys with the Tommy guns that broke up the strikes. And they were vicious in the ways that they broke up the strikes. The Texas Rangers were called into Mansfield to make sure that they didn't desegregate the schools in Mansfield in 1956. In 1962, they beat up Pancho Medrano. How many of you know Pancho Medrano? A lot of people here know the guy, knew him. You knew Pancho? Well, they beat up Pancho Medrano and he sued them. And that put an end to their union busting days. I don't think the Texas Rangers have been used against a union since 1962. They beat up a bunch of farm workers, but one of them was Pancho Medrano. And Pancho Medrano had the full strength of the United Auto Workers behind him. And so they sued. They went all the way to the Supreme Court and won. And I don't think the Texas Rangers have been used in that way again. The labor movement began, we always say, with Moses, leading the Israelites out of Egypt. We say Moses was the first union organizer, the first one we know about. And in the United States, it was in the late 1700s, the 18th century. Shoemakers, cordwainers. I think it's the people that attach the sole to the rest of the shoe. I'm not sure. But the cordwainers struck in the 1790s. That was the beginning of American labor history. The AFL was not the first effort to have a national attempt to make a national federation for labor. It was actually the third one that I know of. There was one started right after the Civil War. It was quite successful and very, very progressive. But when its leader died, the movement died. Then there was the Knights of Labor, which were very, very strong, largely because of Texas. The Knights of Labor had a convention in Sherman, Texas in 1885, and they decided to strike the Gould line. Jay Gould was one of the robber barons. He was famous for saying, "I can hire half the working class to kill the other half." But they beat him. The Knights of Labor beat the Jay Gould Railroad line in 1885, the Great Southwestern Railroad strike, led by, what was the guy's name? Steele or Irons, Martin Irons, who's buried down there in Bruceville. You can stop in Bruceville and see his grave. George has seen it. So they were very successful in 1885, but something happened in 1886 that was pretty much the end of them. And that was the great 8-hour day movement. The worldwide 8-hour day movement was focused on Tom Berry's hometown, Chicago. 1886, on May the 1st, they led a worldwide strike for the 8-hour day. And that brings me to another song. It's not in the book. I don't remember the whole song, and I've never seen the tune. I just sort of make it up. 8-hour day. We mean to have 8 hours, and we'll be fighting still. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. So they fought for the 8-hour working day. A bunch of them got killed. There was a big trial afterwards because a policeman got killed. And during that trial, which went on about 13 months, it was more than a year, the Knights of Labor did not support them. The Knights of Labor dropped them. That same year in 1886, Martin Irons was forced to strike against the Jay Gould Railroad line again because they had won in 1885, but Gould reneged on the contract. He ignored the contract and went right on breaking the contract and forced them to go out on strike again. And this time, he did hire half the working class to kill the other half. There's a shootout they do every year at the Great Fat Stock Show. Stock Show. Don't they call it the Fat Stock Show in Fort Worth? And they have two guys shoot it out. One of them's name is Long Hair Jim, something or another. Well, Long Hair Jim was hired by the Gould to shoot the railroad workers. He was one of the hoodlums that was hired, gunslingers that was hired to shoot the railroad workers. And they shot a bunch of them. They shot some in Lancaster, Texas. They had a shootout right there. And we lost in 1886. So the Knights of Labor went down, down, down after that. They had recruited like 100,000 workers after they won in 1885, but then they lost. And they did not support the Haymarket Martyrs. So that was pretty much the end of them. They were quite big and quite pervasive, and they had chapters here in Dallas. And they had chapters, they were trying to organize Thurman, Texas. They never succeeded, but they worked on it. They had a union hall out there in Thurman, Texas, which is about 75 miles west of Fort Worth. So that was the end of them. After 1886, they just tanked. By that time, the AFL had been created. It was actually created in 1882, but in 1886 it changed its name to the American Federation of Labor, and that's the one we all grew up with. Until 1956, when they took over the CIO, Congress of Industrial Organizations. The Congress of Industrial Organizations was begun as the Committee of Industrial Organizations. And it was a gigantic forward step for the American working class. Here's why. When the AFL was formed, back in the 1880s, they decided that the safest thing they could do was just organize the highly skilled craftsmen. Like if they went into a butcher shop, they didn't organize everybody that worked there. They didn't organize the people that cleaned up or the people that herded the cattle. They only herded they only organized the skilled butchers, the most skilled of all. They organized a few machinists. They organized electricians, for example. Only the most highly skilled and highly educated workers. They wouldn't organize everybody else. They didn't care the first thing about restaurant employees. They might have organized the chef, but nobody else. This is still going on. I had a hospital worker this morning at KNON ask me how she could get a union started because she's a practical nurse. And I said, I don't know. I know how you could organize if you were a registered nurse, because there's a union that organizes only registered nurses. And the rest of the hospital workers are just out of luck. Along came the industrial workers of the world in 1900, I think it was. The industrial workers of the world had a different idea. Their idea was to organize everybody. They would go to a restaurant and say, we want the waitresses, we want the waiter, we want the dishwasher, we want everybody else. In fact, Joe Hill was a dishwasher. He would get a job as a dishwasher and then he'd try to organize the whole restaurant. I don't know if anybody ever saw the movie, Joe Hill, but he does that in the movie. He goes into a posh restaurant, doesn't pay his bill, so they force him to wash dishes. Then the next thing you know, he's marching out the door with all the workers behind him. It's just a story. But that's the kind of thing, the kind of antics that the IWW did, the Industrial Workers of the World. The other thing they did was contribute great songs. And a lot of the music that we associate with unions, like the one I just sang, you ain't done nothing if you ain't been called red. It means if you haven't been called a member of the IWW. They weren't really talking about communists, because the IWW was the original Reds. They had a card, their little booklet, where they put the stamps when they paid their dues. It had 12 little blocks on it, and they were supposed to put a stamp every time they paid their dues in each month. And it was a little red booklet. So they were called card-carrying Reds. And so the song is about being an IWW member. You ain't done nothing if you ain't been called a Red. The IWW was our most romantic period. They were thrilling. You know, the things that they would do. They would, for example, fight for free speech. And my favorite hero is a guy named Frank Little. Somebody would get arrested. They were always getting arrested. They were forever getting arrested because, you know, it was illegal to be a union member for the most part back in the early part of the 20th century. They were always getting arrested for almost anything, spitting on the sidewalk, you know, looking funny. And a lot of them were vagabonds and hobos and itinerant workers. They organized everybody, so they weren't just after the skilled workers, they were after everybody. They had a way of getting arrested that got really fabulous. They would carry these little soapboxes, and they'd go to a park and get up on the soapbox and say, brothers and sisters, gather around, let me tell you how we're going to solve your problems at work. Who here has ever had a boss that called him a name? Or who here has ever, you know, and then they'd do a pitch just like a carnival, Barker at a carnival. And they would sign up workers to join the IWW. Well, they were soon arrested as soon as they got on their soapbox. Then Frank Little would come to town. And Frank Little would say, okay, they're going to arrest us. Get your soapboxes, everybody, because we're all going to jail. They would get on the soapbox and read the Declaration of Independence until they were arrested. Then they would pass the Declaration of Independence to another guy. He would get on the same soapbox and get arrested. until they had filled the jails. And Frank Little would put the word out. More people, we need more people in Spokane, Washington. They won't let us speak here. So come to Spokane and go right to jail. They spent months and months in jail. Frank Little was the main organizer of all this. And I actually went to Fresno, California, where he spent the entire winter in jail. And they would sing their loud songs as loud as they could until it drove the jailers crazy. The jailers would spray them with cold water in the middle of winter. And so they would be soaking wet, but they would sing their little hearts out. What a romantic bunch of stories. And they would win. The industrial workers of the world and Frank Little had more to do with your right to free speech than anybody else. More than George Washington, more than Thomas Jefferson, more than Martin Luther King, more than Mahatma Gandhi. They used nonviolent resistance to defend the right to free speech. And it was really, really a wonderful part of our history. In the beginning of World War I, on August the 1st of 1917, Frank Little had been outspoken against the draft. And he came to Butte, Montana, where there was a big strike. There was an explosion in a mine, and 269 workers suffocated down in this mine. Well, all the miners in Butte, Montana said, we ain't going to work until something's done about safety here. The mine owners said, you have got to work because the war started. They need the copper. It's your patriotic duty to go back to work without any changes in mine safety. Frank Little came to town, got it out in the ballpark on his first day there, and said, to hell with the miners and to hell with the war. He didn't live long after that. The miners sent a gang of thugs to his rooming house. They dragged him out, put a noose around his neck. It wasn't the first time he'd ever had a noose around his neck either. But this time they put the noose around his neck. They cast his crutches aside. They attached the rope to the other end to the car, and they pulled him up and down the streets of Butte, Montana. Then they took him to a nearby railroad trestle, left him hanging. I think he was already dead, but they'd been driving him up and down the streets. No one was ever arrested for it. From that point on, from August the 1st of 1917, the government unleashed the most horrendous red-baiting, witch-hunting, union-busting campaign in American history. It lasted way up until 1928 or so. They completely stamped out the industrial workers of the world. Some of them were killed, some of them were horsewhipped, thousands of them were deported because a lot of them were immigrants, you know. And in those days, they didn't have as strict rules about immigrants as we do today. So they rounded up the ones that they could deport and deported them. They put them in jail. The trial was held in Fort Worth. No, that's not true. The archives for the trial are in Fort Worth. I've never looked at them. But I have read enough of them to see one question that they asked everybody. Did you know Frank Little? It was worth a prison sentence to know Frank Little. And the people who did know Frank Little went to prison. I actually talked to Frank Little's niece in Yale, Oklahoma, where Frank Little and I are both from Oklahoma. And she said, we never talked of him. She remembered him from when she was a little child. She said, nobody ever mentioned his name in our family. And she knew his mother. His mother didn't mention him. Nobody mentioned Frank Little after August 1st of 1917. It was that bad of a repression. They simply, for example, in Oklahoma, the legislature met at the beginning of World War II. They commissioned a bunch of vigilantes in every town, militias, vigilantes, or whatever you want to call them. Then they disbanded, and the vigilantes ruled. until after the end of World War I. And anybody that was an IWW member was hunted and hounded, jailed, horsewhipped, driven. It was the end of the industrial workers of the world, but their idea of industrial organizing didn't die. By that time, the communists had picked it up. And just the progressive wing of the labor movement. They said, instead of just organizing the chef, let's organize the whole restaurant. Instead of just organizing the electricians, let's organize the whole plant. And of course, during that same period, you know, Henry Ford had invented the assembly line. There were factories with 10,000 workers in them. So they got the idea of industrial organizing. The main spokesperson for it was the head of the mine workers, John L. Lewis. Because the mine workers were already organized along industrial lines. They had to organize everybody in the mine because it was, they depended on each other. You know, the guy who did the dynamiting and the guy who drilled the holes and the guy who drove the mules and the guy who did the pick and shovel work, they were all very, very interdependent. So the mine workers were already very well organized. And by the way, it was the mine workers who came to Thurman after the Knights of Labor had failed and organized the whole town. Even the iceman, even the delivery boy. They organized Thurman, Texas, from top to bottom. It was the only organized town in the United States. Here, Thurman, Texas, a little bit west of Fort Worth. You can go to Thurman now, and they have little booklets you can buy there, you know, about the whole period. It was only about 20, 25 years that this lasted, but the mine workers were organized industrially. In other words, they wanted everybody. John L. Lewis got up at the 1935 convention of the AFL-CIO and said, we have to organize industrially. There was a guy named Bill something with the carpenters. I can't remember his last name, but anyway, he got up and called John L. Lewis a name. You know, he said, this is all wrong, you're dumb, and you're fat, and you're a slob, or something like that. John L. Lewis cold-cocked him, hit him with his fist, knocked him over a table. And that was the beginning of the Committee for Industrial Organizing. John L. Lewis got his way, the convention formed the committee, but they hated it. They hated it because these guys would go out and organize an entire plant, and then the electricians would complain. They'd say, well, wait a minute, we want the electricians. You have to divide them out. Or the machinists would complain. They'd say, wait, you have to get the machinists out for us, to keep us going. So the AFL expelled their own committee, the Committee for Industrial Organizing. And so in 1938, they held their own convention and called themselves the Congress of Industrial Organizations, CIO. This was the glorious period of American labor history. First thing they did was organize General Motors, the biggest corporation in America. And they immediately organized the rest of auto. Up to the point of organizing Ford, they did not organize Ford. And I would be digressing, but I can't stand it, I will. I'll digress anyway. How many of you know Joe Wells? The treasurer, county treasurer of Dallas. Anybody know Joe Wells? You do. Okay, I saw him today because he was down there at the Labor Day March. Joe Wells' father was a lawyer, and he just got out of law school and he got hired by this new organization called the National Labor Relations Board. And it had just been passed by the federal government under Franklin Roosevelt. So the National Labor Relations Board was supposed to settle grievances to keep people from going on strike and to keep us from having labor wars, you know. A couple of guys came in to complain about their job. And so we sat down, paper and pencil, and said, okay, well, what's the problem? Here was the problem. These two guys, Fats Perry was one of them, and I can't remember the other guy's name. But this happened in Dallas. They said, we have been working for Ford Motor Company at their East Dallas plant. It's still there, you know. You see the big UAW sign and the big plant behind it. It closed in the 1960s, but it was a big Ford plant here in Dallas. They said, we have been working at the East Dallas plant. Our job was to beat up people. Our job was to break people's thumbs gouge out their eyes, take them and horsewhip them, or anything else to make sure there was no union around there. And the problem is they laid us off. They beat the union so bad in Dallas with one killing. There was one killing. God knows how many beatings and whippings. There was one tar and feather event with the cooperation of the Dallas Morning News. The Dallas Morning News and the police and the Ford hoodlums were all in it together. And they beat up other people from other unions too, but mostly it was the auto workers that they particularly didn't like. The Fastberry and this other guy were complaining because they had gotten laid off. And so here's Nat Wells writing all this down. Okay, well, who did you beat up? When did you beat them up? How bad were they hurt? You know, which hospital did they go to? Starts writing it all down. And these two guys sat and told him. They told him all this stuff. Nat Wells, Joe Wells' father, organized Ford Motor Company more than anybody else because the union had pretty much failed. Ford was very, very difficult. You know Ford. You know Henry Ford. Henry Ford was the #1 supporter for Hitler in America. The #1 source of funds in America for Hitler was Henry Ford. This is not a nice guy. And he had hired goon squads in all of his Ford plants to make sure that the union could not get in. There would be a goon squad inside the plant and another goon squad outside the plant. The inside guys were in charge of trying to figure out who the union people were. The outside plant guys were supposed to rubber hose them or beat them up, burn their cars, you know, whatever it took. All with the complicity of the Dallas police and the Dallas Morning News. And Nat Wells wrote all this stuff down. So he took this to the court. The Auto Workers Union had already sued Ford, you know, for illegal practices and stopping their union organizing. And the evidence that Nat Wells wrote down was the decisive evidence. Nobody else had the facts like this. The stuff that he had written down was so precise, it was so provable, because you could check the hospital records. So they actually defeated Ford right here in Dallas because of Joe Wells' father. And if you ever get the chance to ask Joe Wells about it, you know, he's got all these papers and everything he'll give you. It's very, very exciting. So the CIO was a gigantic step forward in the American labor movement. From 1938 to about 1946, they organized everything that moved. They organized whole plants too, not just the finest, not just the most expensive, not just the people who made the most money, but everybody. They organized whole factories. They organized North American Aviation, where I worked, which was in Grand Prairie, and you may think of it as the LTV plant, because that's kind of the name that kind of stuck, even though it's had probably a dozen names. By the way, it's closed now. They organized everybody that could be organized. They were so effective and so good that the AFL unions changed their orientation too. And they started organizing by the industrial method instead of just by the craft method. So that brought us up to the point that we hit the golden era of American labor organizing from 1938 to about 1947. 1947, the Taft-Hartley law was passed. The Republicans took over the Congress. They took over Congress in 1946. They had a solid majority. They overrode the presidential veto, passed anti-union legislation. They authorized the non-union, the non-closed shop. They passed a law that said that people can be in a union shop and not have to pay dues, but that the union has to take care of them and baby them along just as if they were members. They didn't know what to call it. They called it the anti-closed shop. A closed shop was one that had been organized. And the bosses were always against a closed shop. Fortunately for them, the Dallas Morning News came to their rescue and decided to call it the right to work law. So an editor of the Dallas Morning News called it the right to work law, came up with that idea, made it sound like something good, and twisted the minds of the whole American population against the unions. And from 1947 to about 1957, they still got bigger because they had some momentum going, you know. And also it was easy. Things were easy. The United States had pretty much the only production capacity in the world after World War II. Everybody else had been bombed flat. So life was easy for most workers. The wealth gap went down. It didn't go up. It went down from the end of World War II until about 1970. People were getting 3% raises every year without really having to strike or fight for it or anything. And this went on for the unions. The year 1947 was really a turning point. By 1956, the AFL and the CIO had combined and made the AFL-CIO. I actually think it was 1955. For the most part, their policies and programs were those of the AFL, not those of the CIO. For example, they gave up their international connections. The CIO felt that all workers in all countries had to work together. The AFL was against that completely. They preferred to work with the CIA, and they did work with the CIA. They were part of the CIA right up until 1995, right up until maybe past 1995. They didn't believe in health care. They didn't believe in national health care. CIO was all for national health care, but they gave it up. Truman was for it. They might have gotten it. But of course, the Congress was against it because they were Republicans then. National health care, they gave up. Over in France, at the end of World War II, they got national health care. In England, they got national health care. Canada got national health care. Lots of countries got national health care right after World War II. Because the people who had fought the Nazis were very progressive, and they were very popular at the end of World War II. Over here in the United States, we had the witch hunt. The progressive element in the labor movement in the United States was driven underground. They were kicked out, jailed, traduced, told lies about, lost their jobs, got destroyed, got kicked out of the unions. The CIO in the period from 1947 to 1950 or so expelled 14 of their most progressive unions, including the third largest union in the United States. So the witch hunt in the United States broke this progressive trend in the labor movement that wasn't broken in Europe and in Canada and in a few other places. But here it was. They gave up national health care. They gave up on improving Social Security. And they decided instead we'll depend on the employers. The employers will give us pensions. We'll get that. They're giving us everything. Why not take that too? And they'll give us health care. We don't need national health care because we'll get it from our employers if we're union members. If we can get it in negotiations. And what about everybody else? Well, we don't care about everybody else. Everybody else is just out of luck. I heard a Teamster president, this was in 1991, a Teamster president get up, and the Dallas Teamster president, Local 745, here. I heard him make a speech in which he said, I'm against welfare. I'm against helping children. I'm against health care. He said, and I'm against pension plans. I'm against helping the aged. And the reason is because if they want those things, they have to join the Teamsters. Of course, that's ridiculous. Everybody can't join the Teamsters. But that was what the man said, and he was president of one of the biggest unions in America, Local 745 here in Pleasant Grove. So, this is a common idea among the AFL, was to say, We don't care what anybody else wants or gets. We're getting something for our members. And to heck with everybody else. The civil rights movement, what do we care about the civil rights movement? What do we care about a bunch of Mexicans? They should be deported. That's what they should do to them, is deport them, because we don't care about them. They're not in our union, and we're not going to have them in our union. Women's rights? Why should we bother? We're getting our 3% every year, the way things are. And that prevailed in America. Which brings us up to today. And I mean literally today, I mean this morning. George was there. There was a speaker for, there were several women spoke. There were 2 or 3 speakers on immigrants' rights. We didn't get the LBGT community. Was not represented. But, I don't know, did anybody see the Dallas Voice for this week? On the front page is Rosie the River. And it's Rosie the River right there. It's a fine picture. It's one they posed themselves with a model. But anyway, it's Rosie the River. And it's got Labor Day issues. And it says, these are our proud union members that are members of the LBGT community here in Dallas. And there are pictures and little bios on them. A couple of them I know. And they were from several different unions. See, if you have a union, you're not that scared to be out, because the union will protect you. You know, you won't get fired for being gay if you're in a union. So even though we didn't have the LBGT community out there at our Labor Day March, we did have a very broad and encompassing deal. There were union members who were out there, and Mark York, the new head of the Dallas AFL-CIO, was there and played a prominent role. Job with Justice, my organization that I've been building since 1990, was prominent in the thing. And several community organizations, voters' rights groups. The point I'm trying to make is that it was very broad. It wasn't just one teacher saying, I don't care about anybody else. This happened in 1995. There was an overthrow of the AFL-CIO. For the first time in its history, the leadership of the AFL-CIO did not get to pick their successors. The old guys went out and they said, well, these are the ones we want. They got voted out, and the other team got voted in. And they were the ones from the old CIO. They were the ones that had industrial organizing. They were the ones that said, we have to have women's rights. We have to have immigrants' rights. We have to have LGBT rights and everybody's rights. We have to have an attitude toward the entire working class and pull together with the entire working class. Otherwise, we're going to keep on losing. Because see, we had been losing. We had clearly been losing since 1957. Our contracts were getting worse. Our union sizes were getting smaller. Plants were being closed. Jobs were going overseas. We were losing elections. This was happening. Although it was very gradual. But by 1995, it was quite evident that the American labor movement was on its way to extinction. So the new guys came in. They turned a whole bunch of things around. There are only about 1 in 10 voters is from a union family. If you counted all the voters in America, only about 1 in 10, or maybe a little bit more than that. 1 in 9.8 or something like that, is from a union family. But 1 in 4 people who actually voted is from a union family. They've turned it around that much since 1995. In 1995, union voters voted just like everybody else. In other words, about half of them were Democrats, about half of them were Republicans. They didn't pay any attention to what the union said. But now, around 67 or 66% of union voters vote with the union. And among retirees, it's even better. Union retirees are the best voters in America. Me and George. Union retiree, and Tom. Union retirees are the best voters in America because, like other retirees, they vote in very high percentages, but they also vote with the union. So union retirees are the best voters in America, and that's why they started the Alliance for Retired Americans. That's why they made me president of it, because, or the Texas Alliance, because of that. Is there any particular song that people would like to sing? Because I want to do...
Tell us that reminds me of a song.
There's several songs here that I can sing that I know of.
16 tons.
You want to do 16 tons?
Yeah.
Why not?
Okay, I don't know if I can get the chords right or not, but I'll strum it on.
We won't know the difference.
Yeah, who would know?
Here we go. Who knows the chords?
Does that say some people say a man is made out of mud? And then the second one, oh my gosh.
Page 20.
Page 20. And I was born one morning, the sun didn't shine. And I was born one morning, it was drizzling rain. And you see me coming, better step aside.
Yeah.
The Tennessee Ernie Ford
Right.
in the 50s, right? Some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood, skin and bone, a mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. To St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. And somebody goes,
That's tough.
I was born one morning in a drizzling and the sun didn't shine. Thrust up my shovel and I walked to the mine. I loaded 16 tons, a number 9 coal, and the straw boss said, well, bless my soul, you load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. I was born one morning in a drizzling rain. Fighting and trouble are my middle name. I was raised in a canebrake by an old mama line. Can't no high-tone woman make me walk the line. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debts. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. It's tough after this. If you see me coming, better step aside. A lot of men didn't, a lot of men died. One fist is iron, the other is steel. If that left one don't get you, then the right one will. You know, 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
Very good.
That's a good one. I wish Dark as a Dungeon was in here, because that's a good mining song. But it's a good time to make the point that the miners were the progressive union. It was the miners who started the CIO. It was John L. Lewis himself who started the CIO. And he hired the most progressive organizers he could get. A lot of them were communists. And he said, the hunter, something about the hunter and the dog. He says, it don't matter which dog you get, as long as you're the hunter and you're the one that gets the grouse, or something like that. I want to do which side are you on?
Yeah, that's good.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
It just happens to be my favorite. The story is, in 1926, miners again. Oh, it's on page 21. Miners again. There was a sheriff named J.H. Blair, and his idea of dealing with the miners was shoot them or beat them up. He had goons. He had thugs. And the thugs surrounded the house of John Reese. John Reese was an organizer for the United Mine Workers. And this took place in Harlan County, Kentucky. This is a true story. J.H. Blair and his hoodlums surrounded the house. Well, John Reese wasn't there, but Mrs. Reese was, and the children. She told the children to get under the bed and hide. She sat in the kitchen. There was a calendar. She took the calendar off the wall and wrote this song. while worrying about whether or not her husband was going to come home and get shot by J.H. Blair and his hoodlums that were surrounding the house. Another version of the story is that they were actually shooting into the house, but I'm not so sure that's true. But definitely, they were in fear of their lives when she wrote this song. It's really easy to sing because it's only got 3 words. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Which side are you on? Wait a minute, let's do another key. Goes, which side are you on? 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 Just keep singing that. Come on, you good workers, good news to you I'll tell. It's about this good old union that's come in here to dwell. Now tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Sing it again. Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? My daddy was a miner, and I'm a miner's son. And I'll stick with this union till every battle's won. Well, sing it. Which side are you on? 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 Of course, the reason I like this song so much is because you don't have to be smart to be a progressive activist. My favorite progressive activist was who wrote The Thin Man? Raymond? No, not Raymond Chandler. The detective story writer. He wrote The Thin Man. He wrote The Maltese Falcon. Who was that guy? I don't know. He had a funny name. Anyway, he went to jail because he served in World War I, and then he served in World War II. He was an old man. And then he went to prison for refusing to name his friends to the House Un-American Activities Committee. And they would ask him, what about Stalin and this or that, and he'd say, I don't really know about all those things, but I know which side I'm on. And I always admired that. Because you don't have to be smart to be a progressive activist. You just have to know that that working class is the progressive class. And if you're for higher wages instead of lower wages, you're on the right side. The main issue in today's Labor Day was raising wages for everybody. Restaurant workers, and everybody else. Raising wages, that's the patriotic thing to do, it's the right thing to do, it's the American thing to do, and it needs to be done. So which side are you on? They say in Harlan County, there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair. Which side are you on? Sing it. Which side are you on? Sing it again. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Oh, workers, can you stand it? Oh, tell me how you can. Will you be Union folks or will you be a man? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? It's which will you be, a lousy scab or will you be a man? I'm sorry. Don't scab for the bosses. Don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got no chance unless we organize. Which side are you on? 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 Isn't that a wonderful song? And the woman wrote this while being in fear of her life. Florence Reese, 1929. I knew a guy who knew her, and he was so impressed. Turn to page 4 because we have to sing this. Is this going on too long?
No.
This is the last one unless you want, if you want to do some others and you have requests.
You're good. You keep going.
You want to do more or, because there's not going to be much rebuttal,
Oh, there is.
Oh, there is?
It's going to rebuttal.
Okay. Well, we could do We Shall Not Be Moved. We Shall Not Be Moved is a farm workers song from the Southern Tenant Farmers Union. They stole this tune, like most of the tunes are stolen from hymns, because poor people didn't really, they didn't have pianos and stuff like that. They stole the tunes from church and just wrote different words on it. We Shall Not Be Moved is on page 8, and this is the song of the Southern Tenant Farmers Union. And you can make up the words for it. You don't have to sing the ones that are on here. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Now let's make up some words. Walmart's gonna lose. We shall not be moved. Walmart's gonna lose. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. Walmart's gonna lose. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the waters. We shall not be moved. What's the last verse? We're fighting for our children. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our children. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the waters. We shall not be moved. And you can go on and on like that. You make up lyrics to it, and it's a real marchable song too. You can sing it while you march. I love that. But let's do number 4, page 4. This is Labor's Anthem. It's another song that came from the industrial workers of the world. It was written in 1915 and by Ralph Chaplin. And it was first performed at Hull House, an immigrant's place, a place where they did services for immigrants in Chicago. And there was a march there in 1950. The march was led by a Texan, Lucy Parsons, from Johnson County, Texas, right below Fort Worth. A black woman who married a white guy and moved to Chicago. So she led this march in 1915, and this was the first time it was ever sung. But now it's considered the national anthem of labor. We feel obligated to stand up when we sing it. We usually hold hands and we sway back and forth like this. Yeah. And you get 1,000 people doing that. It's really intoxicating. It's really lovely. Of course, the tune is stolen, just like most of our labor songs. The tune was Battle Hymn of the Republic, but that was stolen too, because it was originally a Union song in the Civil War. John Brown's Body. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on. Glory, glory. So that's the tune that they made Solidarity from. But we sing it just Solidarity Forever, Solidarity Forever. It's a really good, easy song to learn because it's only got 2 words. But look at how profound those words are. Just look at the first verse. When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run. There can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. But what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? Our union makes us strong. Isn't that profound? I love that. When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. But what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? The union makes us strong. Sing it out. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn. But without our brains and muscle, not a single wheel could turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. It is, what are we down to? Is our hands is placed to power? Our hands is placed to power. Greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies, magnified 1,000-fold. We will bring to earth a new world from the ashes of the old. The union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. It is we who plowed the prairies, built the cities where they trade, dug the mines and built the workshops, endless miles of railroad laid. Now we stand outcast and starving, neath the wonders we have made, but the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. I hope this brightened and helped your Labor Day. Thank you very much.
He gets to stand up or answer any questions people have. So, oh, you may have questions. I don't know. You can ask them. Anybody have any questions?
Are you George Nolan?
Yes.
Yeah, you have questions.
Ask him any questions that you like.
Please do.
Now's the chance. It's your turn to ask questions. It's your turn.
This is my commercial. If you want to join the, if you believe in retiree rights and want to defend the retiree rights, please join the Texas Alliance for Retired Americans.
Let me pass this out.
Okay. And you can keep the songbooks if you want them. I got them cheap, 15 cents a piece from the United Auto Workers. Any questions or any points? Strong Teachers Union?
They were out there today. They were out there today.
What do you think, Ethel? Is it a strong Teachers Union?
It goes up and down.
It goes up and down?
I don't want to get into it. I had a hard time in DISD with the union, AFT. You know, maybe it was the people I went to. Amy Boland, she was the president then. I think they did what they could for some, and some they didn't do anything. They were scared of the principals. This is, you know. So, but I know there's good unions. What about you, Marilyn?
Shall I respond to that? Or do you want me to? I had a bad time with the Teachers Union in Houston where I did most of my teaching too. And I had agreements where I had come out against the bond proposal. The principal said we should promote the bond proposal. I said I wasn't going to do it. And I had 100% of my building signed up. I was the building rep. And this was in a middle school in Houston. And I forgot what they charged me with, but they were trying to get rid of me. Because I was the only person, I was holding press conferences against the bond proposal. Because, I'll tell you why too. Because I noticed that integration was supposed to be the law of the land since 1954, wasn't it? Since the Brown versus Speaker. And yet, they had continued, and are continuing to this day, to build schools in the middle of ethnic groups instead of on the borders between them. So you have a big Jewish section, you build an elementary school right in the middle of it. They should have built them on the borders if they were serious about integration, but they didn't. And so this bond proposal was for 9 new schools in Houston, and every damn one of them was right. There was a big one in the middle of the black community, another big one in the middle of the Hispanic community, you know, and there was no attempt to integrate them in the placement of these schools. So they tried to get rid of me, and I won the grievance because really they didn't have anything, anything they could really get me for. But I had to sit there and listen to very provocative stuff from my union rep, sat and talked to the principals and the administrators in front of me. in a very provocative way. And I think they were trying to get me to do something or say something that would have caused me to get fired. Because I felt the union was not representing me very well. That was not the same union that you have here in Dallas. It's true that some unions are better than others, and it's also true that there's a reason for it. For example, I work in aerospace, and the aerospace workers all say, oh, those damn auto workers, they've got everything. They've got cradle-to-grave insurance. They still do, even now. The auto workers have got cradle-to-grave insurance. They got dental. They got hearing aids. They got glasses, things that we lost months and years ago. But there's a reason for it. If you have an assembly line and 3 guys are missing, that assembly line shuts down, doesn't it? That's power. Those auto workers have got power. They can shut down an assembly line with even a small group. They could take just the ones who, for example, inflate the tires. They could all walk off with whatever it takes to inflate a tire in their pocket, and they would not be able to produce cars. It would shut down the assembly line. So that's why the auto workers turned out to be such a tremendous, powerful union after they organized. And it's why they couldn't organize them before because they were only trying to organize certain craftspeople and they couldn't organize them. But after they started organizing everybody, they could shut down the assembly line. They made them very powerful. Well, you can compare that to the teachers, where you got one teacher is teaching a class over here, another one's teaching a class over there. This one misses. Who cares? They just get a substitute. You'd have to take out 40% of the teachers in order to shut the schools down. It would be very hard to do. And the strength of the union, I know that all the unions preach voting. They preach the importance of elections, and God knows they are important. But they are not our main strength. Our main strength is to not cooperate. Our main strength is to go on strike, or to run a slowdown, or to conduct a boycott. To stop cooperating. Stop buying their stuff, or stop building their stuff, or at least slow down and make it harder for them to make money. That's our main power. I don't mean to speak against voting because I'm all for it, but it's not our main power. Our main power is to stop cooperating. And we don't see that in the United States very much. But you see it in France. You see that they're organized differently over there. And I have been told that they don't even have as many union members as we do. It's the difference in the way they're organized. They're organized politically. The political power, the political parties each have their own union. And those unions will stand up on a political issue. And if they want to shut the country down, they can do it. And they do every now and then. And they have, much better contracts than we do. They get 6 weeks off. Did you see sick? Was that the name of Sicko or Sick? Sicko? Was that the name of the word? Remember how great the maternity leave they had? Not only the wives get like 2 or 3 months of maternity leave, the husbands get maternity leave. And they have these home visitors that come show you how to fold diapers and stuff like that. They have won all kinds of things because of the power of the unions in France and also in Germany and in Japan and in Korea, but not here. Here they managed to get us very, very divided and broken up after 1947. And so we don't have anything like the power that we often have. Yes,
Why do you think there's never been a party called the Labour Party for, because in England, I'm a beneficiary of the Labour Party after the war. The Labour Party did 3 things: housing, education, and health. And really, I benefited by all 3 things. Now, in this country, you've never had that. You never had any party that supported the working people. You had 2 parties supporting the right wing, basically, as far as I can see. And that's too. And I'm going to give a speech saying, why on earth would you support the Democrats? Because I don't think they've done anything for the working people for, 30, 40 years. Sorry, folks.
Because you got to look at the other side.
Well, I know, but why vote for the,
Who are you going to vote for?
Well, why didn't you start a progressive party, Why go along? Why don't you start one?
The brother comes from a country where they have a parliamentary system. You have a political party, and if they win 20% of the votes, then they get 20% of the reps. Here in the United States, it's all or nothing. You win 20% of the votes in an election in America, you got 20% of nothing. You got nothing. Nobody gets in office. So you can't build up, you can't get 20% of the state legislature this year and try to get 30% next time, You can't, and you can't build a coalition with another union, or another party and try to take over this or that. It's either the Democrats or the Republicans. It's got some good sides to it, but a bad side to it is that it's very, very, very hard to start a third party. Yes, ma'am.
I could just maybe try to answer John's question, which is, is a very important one. Education. Where's the book? This is the history that we didn't get. And I was always very impressed by the progressive movement, during the Teddy Roosevelt era. And by the way, Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican, but during that era we got the national parks and so much happened. Then that couldn't happen today. But I didn't learn about that until I got to college, and it was in a photography, an art class. This is who writes our history books, and damn it, you need to. We need to change our education.
And said history is bunk.
It's not. It is the way it's taught in our primary and secondary schools, and you really have to go into a very specialized area to learn what really happened. And I had a great college teacher who was a folklorist, and so I learned a lot from her too. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. This is amazing.
Who writes our history? Well, who writes our history books? Well, who owns the history book companies? Who owns the movies? Who owns the radio station? Who owns the TV station? I mentioned the Dallas Morning News several times in here. The Dallas Morning News is a progressive newspaper by comparison to most of them.
Is that right?
By comparison, relatively speaking, they're against the death penalty. In some ways, they're for women's rights. And I mentioned several times how they specifically cooperated with the Dallas police to hooliganize the labor movement, and how they specifically went out of their way to legitimize the worst anti-labor legislation in the history of the United States. So, relative to the rest of them, the Dallas Morning News is still more or less progressive newspaper, believe it or not, because they're all owned by big corporations.
Houston.
Everything that they write is either coming straight from those corporations or being approved by them. And that includes the history books, doesn't it?
Yes. I would agree completely, and probably
Go ahead.
Probably through the schools. What are my husband was very great progressive. He was Greek and he grew up in a different system. But he taught at SMU. What you can say in as a tenured college professor is probably very different from what you can say and get away with in your high school if you're in the DISD.
But you generally can't become a tenured. You'll never get that far if you don't keep your mouth shut.
It's hard. You're right. He came from another planet, but anyway, I think that he came in through the back door and through the art world, and that's a whole other story. But he could say, and it's harder now, very hard to get tenure. In fact, that's a thing that's going away, sadly, because of whatever. But I think that would be the first. It would be the first step is to improve, education and tell a real history of this country. The real fights that were fought.
Has President Obama done anything for working people? No. You said no. You said no. You said no.
I did not
That is
say
not-
that, and
that
I
is
have
not
the
opinion
microphone.
Of the AFL-CIO. The AFL-CIO would say, thank God for Obama. The first thing he did when he first came in was stand up for women's rights, the Lilly Ledbetter equal pay law. He brought that in. He's done all kinds of stuff by executive order right now. He's trying to find some way to alleviate the burden of the immigrant population, even though he's been called the deporter in chief. But nevertheless, and look at it this way.
He tried on healthcare.
The newspapers today are invade Russia, invade Russia, invade Russia, aren't they? I heard somebody talking about it when I came in earlier. They're yelling for the heads of the Russians, aren't they? You supply the news, I'll supply the war, said William Randolph Hearst, the famous newspaper publisher of his day. Obama hasn't done it. This ain't bomb Syria. Obama hasn't done it. There's been fewer invasions under Obama than any recent president. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, when we were talking about education, most of the history books and the other books in this country are published and written in Texas, by the way. And the thing is, history has been changed, and we have a state board of education that is completely worthless. So, and the thing is, when we say that don't use the word slavery, it's to trilateral trade agreement. You know, when we want to teach creationism and the earth is only 6,000 years old, without any, the scientific, Susan here. Susan came in and disturbed my thought.
Her fault.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I'm saying is that we have to change some of these things, and we have to do it by not knuckling under, by going out, become an activist. Go out there and put yourself on the line a little bit. Don't just sit back and say, let Susan do it.
Any questions? Speak up, Susan.
Well, the unions are not perfect. Everybody should know that. The unions are just like anything else in politics. If you do something that pleases this person over here, you're going to piss off 5 other people over there. If he wins agreements on overtime, those 2 women over there are going to be furious about it. Because he got something and they didn't get anything, and also he might have gotten something that maybe they should have gotten. So, no matter what you do in the union movement, half the people are going to hate you for it. My union right now is in a terrible strife, terrible situation. They closed the main plant. They moved the work 20 miles over to another place and said, oh, well, this is a different facility. This has nothing to do with you, even though they're the same workers, the same work. This has nothing to do with you, and it's a non-union plant. And we can do anything we want to, because this is Texas, where there is zero protection for the workers. What's my union going to do? Sue their pants off is what they're doing. And we say we're going to win, but we don't know the outcome yet. It's very, very hard to go through. In 1984, the company decided, at LTV Corporation decided that they were just going to take a bunch of concessions from us. They were going to take away our drug card, and they were going to take away our annual cost of living raises. And they just said, well, we're just going to do that. Tough. If you don't like it, it's tough. And why don't you go on strike? They were positive that they would beat us if we went on strike. The union said, well, we're not going to go on strike, but we're not going to cooperate either. And so one of the things we're going to do is we're not going to work overtime. So let's see you build all those airplanes without our working overtime. And so some of us actually didn't work overtime. I got fired for that on May the 21st of 1984. And I was out of the job for 1 year, 1 month, 1 week, And one day, standing outside the plant, begging for help, with a little plastic bowl every Friday, a little plastic bowl that I stood outside the plant and said, don't you want to stand up for the union? Don't you want to help the union? We picketed every Saturday while our friends walked right through our lines to go in there and grab up that overtime money. Well, they weren't scabs because we weren't on strike. In fact, some of them were our union leaders. Some of the most popular union leaders in the union walked right through our lines. Half the union leaders quit. They were scrounging to try to find some union leaders to take appointed jobs without even holding an election. Just say, will you please come and be the steward for this area? Or will you come and be the committee? Will you be a trustee? Will you come on serve on the executive board? Couldn't find people. They were so scared. And we were getting so whipped. We were getting so beat. I taught a lot of people to sing, which side are you on? During that year. I can tell you that. And solidarity forever. It was awesome. But we finally won. The truth at the end of the story is that we won. On July the 5th of 1985, 64 of us lined up, wore our union t-shirts in solidarity all over. We wore our union t-shirts and we lined up before dawn in front of the personnel office. And we walked in together, 64 of us, big hired people. And they walked us one at a time to the department for whoever was in front. We go to their department and say, put these two men back to work, put that woman back to work. And they would go back to work, then the rest of us would march on to the next one. It took us all day. Finally, we got to my workplace, and they said, put this man back to work. And the boss said, okay, go over there on number 62A and load those parts. And I had completely forgotten how to do anything. I was never a very good machinist to begin with, and I loaded the parts upside down. Took me a couple of hours, and I got them all loaded, and I looked at them, something wrong. I had loaded them upside down. But we won. We came out of it with the best contract in the aerospace industry in America. That's the power of the working class. Even though we didn't stick together very well, and we had all these traitors and all these people walking through our lines and all the insults. You know, they didn't just walk through our lines, they also insulted us. One of my best friends went through his pockets like this. Long time, and finally came up with one penny and dropped that in my bowl with a sneer on his face. Go ahead.
I'm interested with so little support. How did y'all win? What happened?
The union changed its attitude. The union changed its tactics. In Christmas of 1984, I hope this is not boring people. In Christmas of 1984, we were down to where we were only collecting 10% of our dues. And we only had 70% of the people signed up to begin with. We started the whole struggle with only 70% signed up. And out of that 70%, we were only collecting dues from about 10% of them. So we were only collecting dues from about 7% of the people in the plant. And so the leadership came in and said, we're going to have to do something different. We're going to have some support. Well, first place they looked was to us. I had organized all the fireys. All 65 fireys were in my fireys club. And I was the secretary of it. And I called them up and got them to come to meetings. I had 35 retirees active, doing stuff. We picketed the board of directors downtown. We picketed the LTV building downtown. We sold pecans. We sold ham. We had fish fries. We had a steak show. We did everything we could think of to keep drawing attention. And you know, we stood at the gates every Friday and we picketed every Saturday. And we did stuff. And in January of 1985, they turned us loose on the whole thing.
And they said, instead of just trying to run the union the way we always have, let's let the workers in the plant do stuff. So they started giving out receipt books. My wife got one. She was working in the plant. And they said, go out there and collect the dues. And don't wait for the steward to do it. Just go do it. And so they just turned loose all of the activists, all of the people who cared on the union. At the same time, and this is a personal part of the story, when they started bringing those dues receipts in, the union was not set up to where they could figure out what to do with all the receipts. Because we weren't clerks, we weren't accountants, you know, we were machinists. But fortunately for them, I used to be an accountant. And I was one of the few people who knew how to operate a computer. So I dragged a Commodore 64 in with 2 drives, 2 floppy disk drives. On one floppy disk drive, I put everybody's name that was supposed to be paying dues and how much they owed. And I'd run that through from one side, and I would type in the receipts for the day. I'm a very fast typist. And on the other side would come out with how many dues they had paid. So not only did we have a way of keeping up the receipts. This was the first computer in any union anywhere around here. It was a Commodore 64. Remember the Commodore 64?
Oh yeah, that's a little tiny.
You bought them at the TGNY store. You know, you bought them at the high school. Anyway, I could also make graphs. I could show the leadership who was paying their dues and who wasn't, who was collecting their dues and who wasn't, where we were strong and where we were weak. And they got to looking at that, and our dues collection went up from 10% to 50 something, a little over 50%. And they looked at it and they said, you know, we've got some departments completely. We've got some departments where we've got 75% or so of people paying their dues. We'd shut this plant down. For the first time, they said, we can shut this plant down. We've got the machine shop. And they can't run this plant without the machine shop. And the machine shop was paying their dues. We had it. So we went on strike on July the 1st of 1985. It lasted 11 hours. The company caved. That's the power of the workers. Even in the sorry condition that we were in, when we found the formula, a way to get people together just a little bit, we scared them to death. We got the best contract in the industry. And in 1988, we got another good contract, the best contract in the industry. Our contract at LTV was better than Boeing's contract. They had 10,000 men. Our contract was better than McDonnell Douglas. They had 25,000 men. But that was it. That was a big old padlock on it.
Why did they close?
Well, why are they closing all the plants? It's a better question. You know, just talking about that particular plant is maybe a little bit too esoteric. It had to do with the environmental laws and stuff like that. But why are they closing all the plants in America? Because they can. Because they can close a plant in America and open one in Thailand and pay 35 cents an hour and get away with it. Why are they doing it now? And they didn't do it before. Because they can do it now. Yeah, but why didn't they do it previously? Yeah, after Reagan got in there, they were encouraged to do it. And they were encouraged to make all the money in the world overseas. I just read the other day that Apple has like $1 trillion outside the United States that's never been taxed in this country. They only use it over in other countries to buy this or that factory or this or that brand or whatever in other countries. And who is it? Pfizer that was trying to go to Canada and
Burger King.
Pfizer was trying to go to England.
Those inversions, the tax inversions.
Yeah. So that their tax rates would be lower. Well,
No, because they had the money over there, so they could buy up stuff abroad.
I need to bring it back. It's largely, this happened after Reagan was elected. Reagan looked at the situation and he said, we are no longer the only country in the world that can produce and manufacture anything. The American century is over. They now have factories in Europe. They make cars. They make good cars. Their cars are coming over here. Remember when we laughed? I don't guess anybody's old enough to remember when we used to laugh at Volkswagens. We said, there goes the Volkswagen. They'll never succeed here. They'll never succeed. And Fiat, remember the Lecoq again?
Fiat you can laugh at.
Yeah, well, you could have then. You don't laugh at them now. They own Chrysler.
Yes, they fixed it again, Tony.
Yeah. So Reagan looked at that and said, we no longer rule everything. So what we're going to have to do is compete. We're going to have to out-compete the other countries.
Can't do it.
How do you compete?
You can't.
If you're a manufacturer, well, you cut costs. You cut costs, don't you?
Yeah.
And what are your costs? Labor. President Reagan deliberately led an attack on the working class that became American policy. Deregulation, encouragement of offshoring, breaking the unions, specifically attacking some unions, but in other ways just passing laws that made it harder to get a union, harder to organize one, harder to keep one, harder to do bookkeeping. You know, in my union, I have to write down every hour I do for the union. I have to turn it in every month. Everything I do, and I don't even get paid. I'm just a volunteer. But I have to write down everything that I do that's union related, and I have to turn it in every month so it goes to the federal government. They are doing all kinds of just crap like that to the unions to make it harder and harder for us to exist. And companies are moving. Companies go through bankruptcy. Look what American Airlines just did. One of the most profitable companies in the world went through bankruptcy, cut off a bunch of people's pensions, took away a bunch of people's health care, took away some other benefits like some flying benefits and stuff like that, and then reopened and made more money than they'd ever made before. Just almost immediately. It was like the second quarter after their bankruptcy. They started turning in more money than ever before. They didn't used to have bankruptcy laws like that. That came after Reagan. Bankruptcy laws were changed after Reagan. And it's American government policy to lower labor costs for American financiers. I started to say for American companies, but really it's the financiers. It's the banks. It's the stock market people and stuff like that. There's an all-out attack, not just against unions, but against all working people. And specifically against unions, because the unions are the only ones that can fight back. That's the situation that we're in. But the good news is that we're all learning how to fight back. It's just kind of like a microcosm of the story I was just telling you, how brought the Commodore 64 in, we started doing things a little differently. Well, since 1995, the AFL-CIO has been doing things differently. And here in Dallas, they're doing things differently. We had our last union leader of AFL-CIO made a very specific commitment to doing as little as possible. But the new guy that we elected about a year ago, Mark York, he's a young guy too. He's only 50 or something, 45 or 50, something like that, and just a kid compared to me and George. He's hired jobs with justice. He hired the woman who's running jobs with justice. And he hired another woman that's a mobilization coordinator. And he's got at least 2 national AFL-CIO reps working out of his office. They endorsed 95 candidates in the primaries. Used to, we didn't even endorse in the primaries. We didn't even pick a candidate in the primaries. We just waited until the Democrats had pointed out, and then we endorsed maybe 5 of them. Just the ones that we thought we could win. We endorsed 95 people in the primaries. And we held today's march, with immigrants and with community groups, women's supporters. We had We have an entirely different approach. And we're going to win. We're going to kick ass.
Yeah, Gene, as you know, probably more than I do, that's about, what, 6% of the private industry is unionized, and about 6% of government is unionized. Now, my question basically is, well, you can correct me too. My basic question is that we are trying to organize Walmart, we're trying to organize food services, and so forth. Now, is the reason for this because they're the only ones that we can really work with, since most of our industry was sent overseas?
No, that's not the reason. We're also trying to organize Volkswagen. We're also trying to organize Nissan. The reason that Walmart and McDonald's workers are so incredibly important now is because the unions are saying that they want to represent all workers, and they don't get much of anything out of it. Even if you did organize, let's say you organized all of the Walmart workers, well, they only make what, $8.20 an hour is their average wage, I think, something like that. So if you collected their dues, and the dues was like most of them, it's 2 hours a month. So that'd be $16, $16, $17. It's not worth doing it. So in terms of, they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because they realize that for some working people to win, all the working people are going to have to win. We can't just compartmentalize things. We have to go for everybody. Just like the CIO did. The CIO was out to organize everything that moved. So was the industrial workers of the world. The AFL wasn't. And from 1947 to 1995, the AFL-CIO was not worth spitting at. We call them the AFL-CIA. They were more interested in overthrowing Nicaragua, or I went to Nicaragua in 1979, right after the revolution there. And guess what? I went to different public meetings and everything. There was the AFL-CIO trying to organize anti-government organizations, trying to get working people to turn against the government. Because they were down there on behalf of the CIA. They were getting their money from the CIA. I saw it. In the Vietnam War, we marched against the Vietnam War. A bunch of you did, I bet a lot of you marched against the Vietnam War. Where were the unions? You remember Jerry Gordon from the Meat Cutters Union? Vice President of the Meat Cutters Union. There were these long lists of people that endorsed the thing. There's so-and-so from the Sierra Club, there's so-and-so from Women's Rights, here's so-and-so from NARAL, so-and-so from NOW. One guy from the unions, Jerry Gordon, meat cutter. He was just a vice president too. He wasn't a big wheel in the meat cutter. Only one to endorse the big anti-war movement. You know who the last person in America, the last organization in America to stop supporting the war in Vietnam? After Nixon gave it up. After it was just so unpopular that practically every public figure in America had stopped supporting the war in Vietnam. You know who still supported it? AFL-CIO, George Meany, president of the AFL-CIO. You know what they did? We held demonstrations against the war. They got a bunch of what they call hard hats, construction workers, to go down with clubs and beat us up. AFL-CIO, George Meany. That's the kind of guys they were. AFL-CIA. All that's gone. It didn't work. We were getting smaller. We were losing. Our contracts were getting worse. So they started trying something different. We're still losing members. We haven't turned the corner by any means, but you can see some really brilliant light in the labor movement today. This is a great Labor Day. This is a wonderful Labor Day to celebrate. Learn the old songs, get behind the unions. Previous to Mark York, previous to last year in Dallas, you could have worked with the unions. There was nothing that they did that you could help with, and nothing that you were doing that they would help with. They would not endorse anything. They would not coordinate with anybody, anything. They would not cooperate with anything. They were afraid of getting sued. In fact, there was many times that people would call and say, I want a labor person to come and help us stand up, on nuclear power or something, You know who they would send? They would send me, because I didn't represent anybody, I didn't have any money, they couldn't sue me, and I wasn't the spokesperson for the AFL-CIO. They would send me, just as a token. Prior to last year, this is a great Labor Day. This is a wonderful Labor Day. Let's celebrate. Yeah. Gene, how's your suit with Walmart going? Last time you were here, you said they were suing you and you had to give them all your email information. How's that? What's happening there?
I don't know. I gave it to the lawyers. The Walmart wants me to stay off their property. They said I can come there and shop, but other than that, they want me to stay off their property. I'm one of 2 people in the United States being sued by Walmart. There's a woman in Florida and me, and then and the union and Jobs with Justice. And the only thing I'm scared to death is they'll get me for court costs or something. Because frankly, I don't care if I never have to walk on another Walmart parking lot. I don't really care. I never really went in very many of them anyway. But they sued me. And so when the lawyers tell me they need a bunch of...
What were the grounds of their suit? I mean, would they say you were trespassing or, that's a...
Well, they are. They're saying it's civil trespass. But they're saying that they lost money because of some of the antics that our Walmart people have done. Our Walmart people, have you ever seen that video where they go in and do a mob dance? And a bunch of young black women, and they're just clever as the devil, it's like a video of singers and dancers. They're singing and clapping, and stop Walmart, and then it's, and they're like 20 or 30 of them, and they'd step at the same time. They really rehearsed it. Well, they did stuff like that, and Walmart says, we're losing money. And in America, that's a sin. That's a terrible crime. Cost them any money. So that's the basis of their lawsuit, is that they have lost money because of this. So it's basically a cease and desist. They're saying that protesters cannot come on their property. We're saying that this comes under labor law. And on labor law, it's entirely different than just trespass and that sort of thing. It's entirely different than contract law, even. We're saying it comes under labor law, and that workers who are organizing have rights. They can't be fired for it. They can't be told not to come on the property and that sort of thing. So we'll see who wins. I have no idea how it's going. I don't want to know. I don't like lawyers, and I don't like the Knights of Labor that I mentioned earlier. They were stupid. They organized the bosses. They didn't just organize the workers, they organized the bosses. They were very good about civil rights, though. They organized black and white, or anybody they could get, but they organized bosses. They only had one proscription. They would organize anybody in America, bosses, workers, financiers, bankers, anybody, except lawyers. So lawyers could not join the Knights of Labor. I don't like, the reason I don't like, this isn't that I don't like them personally, it's that once you turn things over to the lawyers, the first thing they say is don't do anything. Keep your mouth shut.
stay out of this. You know, George went down and got arrested at a Walmart store, and I was told not to. The lawyers told me, you can't get arrested. It would affect the lawsuit. So don't do nothing. That's what the lawyers always say. Well, I'm the guy that likes to get the people out, you know, and turn people out and win things like we did in 1985. But the lawyers, they say, keep your mouth shut, keep quiet, stay out of the way, let me handle this. Don't they? Any lawyers in here? No, well, you've had experiences. You're a different. No, actually, I've been to court several different times and against the city and stuff, and I always do, and I always act pro se because the lawyers against you working for the city are so stupid. They don't even know the law. I actually read the law, and I go to a judge, look at blah, 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 and these fools don't even read the damn law. But when the lawyers take over a union, a worker's action, they inevitably tell you not to do anything. And I just hate that. Because, see, we really don't have... To a lawyer, the law really is neutral. To a lawyer, the law is set up to defend our rights and to make things fair. They really believe that. They don't believe that the corporations wrote the laws just like they wrote the history books. George, Gene, they're like every professional person. They look at you and they say, how much money can I take off this guy? Yeah. That's all professional people, so-called. Today. The real strength that workers have is to not cooperate. It's our main strength. It's almost our only strength. I mean, we do have strength in our political work. There are things that we can do. We can take up money. You should try to work with the unions if you can. They have more money than anybody else. I mean, I don't mean they have more money than the corporations, but I mean they have more money than the Sierra Club. They have more money than the National Organization for Women. You know, their dues are probably $2 a month or something like that. Our dues are like $65 a month or something like that. So they have more money, they have more buildings, they have more expertise, they have more lawyers. They have longer experience. They know what they're doing. Work with the unions if you possibly can. You can find something that you want accomplished. Try to get the unions involved in it. And thank God, this year in Dallas, you can. It's a wonderful thing. Let's celebrate. All right.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. Who wants to be first? There has to be a first. You want to be first?
Go ahead, Tom.
No, I'm not going to be first. I'll be last. I won't be first. No. Bring somebody else up there. Come on up here.
Well, my dad and my uncles were all members of the various unions, so I grew up in a union family, and we all supported the Labour Party, and certainly after the war, remarkably, because Britain was on its knees. I mean, it really was, and but in spite of the fact that we were literally almost starving and freezing in 1947. The Labour Party brought in the welfare state. And as I say, it's free education, free healthcare, and they built housing for people en masse. It was a remarkable accomplishment given the fact the country was broke. The administration over here did their best to sink it. Someday I'll talk about what they did, especially the FDR. Anyway, but as time has gone on with this relentless right-wing press, anyone who belongs to a union, or the unions in general, is a dirty word. In fact, this Labour Party now in England is trying to distance itself from unions altogether because, everyone's against unions, you see. But in Germany, the unions actually are on the board of directors. In fact, the union leader of the in BMW is vice president of the company. They have they actually work with the working people, actually. You know, and Germany has not deindustrialized, whereas this country has deindustrialized, England has deindustrialized. You know, so really, this whole capitalist system is a losing proposition. I mean, it's in trying to destroy the unions, it's actually destroying the country. And I think that message should be got out by the unions here. Look, do you really want to see this country go down the drain? Because it is going down the drain. I mean, as I said the other week, Thatcher privatized everything. And so now, when I turn the tap on in Barnet in London, who owns that? The Chinese Communist government. I mean, it's and of course, I mean, the Chinese Communist government will be owning stuff over here, whole plants next. I mean, so this country is literally dying on its feet. It's racking up trade deficit after trade deficit, I mean, and destroying itself. Now, this state of affairs is not being, now why on earth the people have seen their standard of living decline and decline and decline, and are apparently happy by it? I'm amazed. So, the message is, look, we have to change this system, really. Be more like Germany. Germany, is still producing stuff. And what they do, they compete because they've innovated. I mean, the stuff you can get in England in terms of everything, appliances, faucets, everything, is miles ahead of what you can buy here. Miles ahead. Because they innovate. And so people buy it, even though it costs a bit more. I mean, we own a Miele washing machine, okay? Because actually, it gets clothes white. I mean, a friend of my wife's was over in England, and she washed stuff, and she couldn't believe it. She said, I haven't got this blouse clean ever over in America. Over here, I put it in the machine, it actually gets white. You have to be there to see it. There's no, what's happened is this country has lost the spirit of innovation. And that's because you've done down the workers, okay? I mean, and the morons that run this country think they can prosper by destroying the country. I mean, it doesn't make sense, really. There should be a party that supports damned America, really, and not these clowns in Washington and the rest of it. And until it does, there's going to be a massive crash. There has to be. You can't be running trade deficits and have a 10 to 15 trillion dollar deficit, the rest of the world growing forever. I mean, your credit card stops at some point. And that situation must be explained. I've never heard anyone explain that situation. Obama, nobody. So when I give a talk here, there's no one to vote for. Nobody in England, no one here at all. We need a progressive party that supports the American people, really.
John, you've depressed me.
No, he hasn't. He's enlightened you. You're up.
Well, today was a good Labor Day, and I got a chance. What's that? So anyway, now that we had the distraction gone, one of the things that Clay Jenkins came out with is Wednesday they're having a city council meeting. Correct, Gene? And what we really need to do is get people to go down there and, too loud, put your fingers in your ears. All right, I do talk a little loud. But whatever, what I'm trying to say is get involved. That's what I'm trying to say at the level of school board and at the level of city council, at every level we have. Now, John has written us off that we're down the tube until we get this third party. I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, or Jean's, or Tom's, because we were born in 1940, or Shannon's. No, Susan. Shannon, not in her lifetime. But anyway, the thing is that we got to all understand what's going on. I haven't thrown in the towel. I never throw in the towel. You know, and I have the time and I have the passion for putting myself on the line. And I wish there were more people that would do this that have the time. But, you know, I realize people have to make a living. I did and so forth. But now that I don't have to make a living, I can go out and do what I think needs to be done. So I'm hoping more people start understanding that. Thank you.
Is there going to be a next? We run out of people to talk? Come on up here. Go girl.
Well, it's just an answer to what George said
Come on
about
up
the
here.
third party. I think it's in her life.
Well, no, that part I would agree with. But, you know, we did have, remember Ralph Nader, he tried, God bless him, he tried. But look what happened at the end of that, if you'll remember, there was a split or something, and that's the year of the hanging chads, and a lot of people blamed, we got Bush, and a lot of people blamed Ralph Nader, who I had a lot of respect for, and I voted for him, but everybody said, it's your fault, it's his fault. But in other words, we have this, everybody's so polarized, would a third party even help? I don't know. That was my only reply. But he tried.
The problem with a third party is that under the existing system, the two-party system, they only need 5% to put a candidate up, where when a third party has put a lot more percent, a greater percentage. The two-party system is already ingrained, where they got a lock on it, on the system. You're not going to get a third party. They're very hard to get one in. Usually one of the parties has to become corrupt, and then the third party will come in. If they become corrupt enough, it could happen. All right. I'm very much impressed with what John had to say relative to what's happening in our country, and pretty much agree with him. I think that our situation is such that we have corporations, we have all the corporations leaving town, going overseas. We have Apple producing everything in China, selling it here, and all the industry. China's going to be higher, is going to be better than we are when they get through. They're going to have all the money. We're not going to have it. And why is this? We got corporations running the world. We have a corporatocracy. We have corporations running our government. That's what's happened. And that has to change. And we really need to put tariffs on corporations, not on other countries. You put a tariff on another country, you got a price war. You put a tariff on a corporation, nothing happens. We could put a tariff on Apple and say you pay the difference in labor costs and the difference in environmental protections, and they would end up having jobs here in order to avoid the tariff. That would be the idea. But in order to do that, we got to change the Congress, because Congress is pretty much bought by the corporations. In my view, maybe about the only thing I can think of that Congress would bite on would be to have free airtime in elections. Then maybe a challenger might beat an incumbent. If that happened, then the incumbents would represent the district instead of representing the people buying their vote in Washington. If that could happen, then you could pass legislation to put tariffs on corporations. If that happened, you could get jobs in your country. And if that happened, you could shorten the workday in the country and do other such things. But all these things are dreams in a way, but in another way, it has to happen. If it doesn't happen, the country's going to go to the dogs. And that's about it. But I better shut up while I'm ahead. And thank you. Our speaker now gets a comment and close the meeting. You get the last word.
Okay, this is the last word.
Yeah, you get the final say on anything.
Capitalism is the problem. John's right. What are you going to do about it? That's what you have to be thinking about. Or should you be doing anything? I'm writing a book. It may be just a pamphlet because I don't know how long it's going to be. I just wrote some scattered fragments about it. It's called, for a working title, I'm calling it Contentment in the Modern World. How would you describe yourself as contented? Or would you describe most people as contented? And how would you get contentment? The best and shortest and quickest way is drugs. You can certainly divert your attention. You know, you could be less worried tonight with some strong drugs. Religion would help a little bit longer. Maybe you could get religious and you could just sort of ignore the suffering of the world and just say, well, they probably deserved it. And maybe that would work for a while, but it wouldn't really work, you know, over a period of time. It wouldn't really work. You could try psychotherapy. You could have somebody work with you to say, well, why is it that you've been feeling so bad? Or when did you first notice that you were feeling all this bad? And you know, my psychotherapist was a drunk, and he smoked. And he was profligate. Really, I loved him. I loved the man intensely. But I got tired of his lying to his girlfriend to cheat on his wife and go out with somebody else and just stay drunk so much. I mean, I was using him to be content, and he was using brandy and several other women. So what's content in this society? You know, I think it was, who wrote Walden Pond? Who wrote Thoreau? Henry David Thoreau. Well, no, Emerson was his friend. Emerson bankrolled him. And Emerson and his friends paid the money while Thoreau went off and pretended to be the first hippie. Anyway, he said something very, very, very profound. He said, society is everywhere in conspiracy against the manhood of every one of its members. There is no contentment if you try to rationalize yourself into this society. The only contentment is to fight this society. Be a George Nolan. George Nolan is more content probably than anybody around here because he does everything he can think of to change this situation that we're living in. He doesn't seem very content. You'd probably most people probably think he's nuts, you know, because he's out picketing all the time or throwing things, you know. Yeah. But look at him laugh all the time. He laughs more than anybody in here, doesn't he? Yep. The only peace is war. If you're living in an unjust society where people are hurting, where there's great suffering, where you live in a county that leads the nation in child poverty. Dallas leads the nation among large cities. There's a larger percentage of child poverty here than anywhere in the United States. The only peace is war. The only contentment is discontent. The only way to be calm is to get angry. And that's the thesis of my book. Do something. This is a quote from President Franklin Roosevelt. Do something. If it's wrong, do something else. But above all, do something. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that is. Very cool.
Get angry. Get angry, get active, get arrested if you must. Don't be stupid. I'm not talking about just going out and breaking windows, you know. I'm talking about thinking. In a thinking, intelligent, human way, let's try to be thinking, intelligent humans. Humans care about each other. That's what I learned in psychotherapy. Up until then, I didn't think people were supposed to care about each other. I thought life is a jungle. I've been told that a million times. Life is a jungle. You have to get yours. They're out to get you. You've got to get them first. Do it to others, but do it to them first. You know, and that sort of thing. I had always believed that. I voted for Goldwater in 1964. So, I did. I came to the conclusion around 1965 that people are supposed to care for each other. And I really had no idea what to do with that. I hadn't the slightest idea. I remember in the Vietnam War, one of the first things I went to, there was a radio station in Houston called KPFT, Pacifica Radio, and they were going around asking everybody, what should we do about this war? And they got to me, and I was eager to speak, just like I am now. And I said the stupidest thing. I said we should all roll down our windows and yell. It was all I could think of. But I was just starting. I've gotten a lot more sophisticated since then.
Roll up your windows and yell.
You are too. You are very sophisticated people. You're very intelligent people. But we have been screwed in the head ever since we were in first grade or kindergarten. We've been lied to. We've been traduced and seduced, screwed, blued, and tattooed. And so we have to think it through again as adults and decide what to do. But do something. Be content in the modern world.
I just want to say KPFT still exists.
Oh, yeah.
It's an awesome radio station. I don't know if it's as progressive as KNON, but it's certainly more than our larger public.
I used to have a program on KPFT, Free Schools Hour, the Free Schools Hour. That was one of the dumb things I did was start a private school where you didn't whip kids. This was a very incredible idea in 1970 to not whip kids. Every school in Texas whipped kids. All over in the closets, in the classrooms, in the hallways, in the bathrooms, they whipped them everywhere. And if you spoke out against whipping kids, you were considered quite quaint. So I started a school in 1970 where there was no whipping allowed. And I had to do television interviews right and left because that was such a novel idea. What? Not beat children? Don't you know they're devils? If you don't beat the devil out of them, then there'll be devils. And but that was one of the dumb things I did. It was a little bit more sophisticated than yelling out the window, but not too much more. Thank you.
Good job, Gene. Thank you, Gene. You missed all his songs.
Well, we're gonna celebrate. We're gonna retire down to Starbucks down at the corner. Gene is welcome. We'll buy him coffee and carry on the conversation, whatever you like. So that's it for tonight.
This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like us or follow us and get notices of all our videos. We love it even when you call. So when visiting the Barbex restaurant, tell them you want your reservation to